Pardon me while I do a bunch of reading here. Stephanie, you know what this looks like. Good morning. I'm Rick Gentry, President of the Board of Directors for Housing Development Partners and HDP Mason. It is now 11:04 a.m. on December the 10th, 2021, and I'm calling to order the special meeting of the board for both HDP and HDP Mason. The process we're using for today's meeting is authorized by Government Code Section 54953 parentheses E, which was added by Assembly Bill 361. This allows the use of teleconferencing and provides the public with an opportunity to address the board through a call-in or internet-based option during a proclaimed state of emergency. The San Diego City Council on December the 6th, 2021, approved a resolution that declares a continuing state of emergency regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. This meeting is occurring by video conference with all board members, staff, and general counsel participating by video. Now, for the record, I will ask each board member to indicate your presence as I say your name. Gary Grambling.
Present.
Stephanie Benvenuto.
Here.
And Rick Gentry, of course, and the three of us are the board quorum today. No members of the public are in attendance. However, members of the public may watch today's meeting, which is being streamed live online. The agendas for today's HDP and HDP Mason board meeting included a link to the webpage for Housing Development Partners on the San Diego Housing Commission website. The public can access the live streaming for today's meeting on that webpage. The public has been provided with an alternative opportunity to provide comments to the board through an online comment form and a toll-free phone number. A link to the online comment form was included on the agendas for today's meeting, which were posted on Housing Development Partners website, which is www.hdpartners.org on December 3rd, 2021. The agendas and the public comment forum explain that written comments about items on the agendas will be read into the record if they were submitted by 4 p.m. yesterday, Thursday, December the 9th, 2021. Written non-agenda public comments submitted by 8 o'clock this morning will be read into the record. In addition, members of the public who wish to speak on an item may call the toll-free phone number that is included on the agendas. Members of the public should monitor the meeting through the live video streaming available through the Housing Development Partners webpage on the Housing Commission's website at www.sdhc.org. Under the quote About Us menu, select quote Housing Development Partners to access this web page. Again, today's agendas also include a link to the web page where the public can access the live streaming for today's meeting. Members of the public should call the toll-free phone number only when the item they wish to comment on is introduced. If a caller begins to comment on an item that is different from the item currently being considered, they will be asked to hang up and call back into the meeting at the correct time. Members of the public will have 3 minutes each to provide their comments. However, if a large number of callers wish to speak on a single agenda item, comments may well be limited to 1 minute each. Now, non-agenda public comments. The phone line is now open to provide non-agenda public comments for the board of HDP and HDP Mason. Please call this number, 833-610-2513, to be placed in the queue to provide non-agenda public comments. And again, this is non-agenda public comments only. We will keep this line open for at least 90 seconds to allow time for members of the public to call in. The number again is 833-610-2513. I'm going to ask Scott Marshall, who is monitoring the phone queue, to let us know when this time has passed and if we have any callers at that time. This is the time when members of the public may provide comments about topics that are not on today's agendas but involve a subject within the area of responsibility for the boards of HDP and HDP Mason. The board cannot take action on non-agenda public comments. The number again is 833-610-2513. And what I would ask, Scott, is if you would, at the end of the 90-second time period, if you let us know, please do so.
About 15 seconds left on the clock. There are no non-agenda public comments.
And there were no comments that came in writing by 4 p.m. yesterday. And there were no items that came in at all today before 8 a.m. as well. So there were been no responses from the public so far. So this concludes the non-agenda public comments time period. Now we will go to the minutes. And what I will ask for is approval of the minutes from the October 28th. And I'll point out that today's meeting again is for both HDP and HDP Mason together, rather than doing one and then the other. I'll switch from one to the other as we go through these items. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from October 28, 2021 HDP Board Meeting and the December 10, 2020 HDP Mason Board Meeting. The line is now open for public comments about the minutes. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. We will keep the line open for 90 seconds to allow time for members of the public to call in. No written public comments were submitted regarding the minutes. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. And Scott, if you let us know when the 90-second time period has passed, please.
We have about 1 minute left. The time has passed and there are no callers regarding the minutes.
Thank you, Scott. This concludes the public comment period for the minutes. We will first consider the October 28, 2021 minutes of the HDP board meeting. Do any board members wish to make any changes to the minutes, or do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Stephanie. Gary, do you second?
Yes, I do.
We have a motion by Stephanie Benvenuto and a second by Gary Gramling to approve the minutes from the October 28, 2021 HDP board meeting. For the record, I will ask each board member to say your vote on the motion when I state your name. Gary Gramling.
I vote yes.
Stephanie Benvenuto.
Yes.
And board members, both Gramling and Benvenuto and me voted in favor of the motion, and there's no one opposed. So it passes by a vote of 3-0. We will now adjourn as the HDP board and convene as the HDP Mason board to consider the minutes of the December 10, 2020 HDP Mason board meeting. Do any board members wish to make any changes to the minutes, or do I have a motion?
I move the approval.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. This time we have a motion by Gary Gramling, second by Stephanie Benvenuto to approve the minutes from the December 10, 2020 HDP Mason Board Meeting. For the record, I will ask each board member to state your vote on the motion when I state your name. Gary Gramling,
yes,
Stephanie Benvenuto,
Yes.
and I, Rick Gentry, vote yes as well. So we have Gramling, Benvenuto, and Gentry voting in favor of the motion and no one opposed. So the motion carries by a vote of 3-0. We will now adjourn as the HDP Mason Board and reconvene as the HDP Board. Item number 4 on the agendas for both of the HDP Board and the HDP Mason Board meetings is the determination of a consent agenda for today's meeting. And hold on just a second. I am not proposing any items from the consent agenda today, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And I've got just a handful of items to mention to you all in opening as board president. And the first, as you may well know, Bobby Spoon, after 11 years of distinguished service on this board, has resigned. She did so last month. And for the first 7 of those years, Bobby also served as a member of the San Diego Housing Commission Board. And I'd like to state, both for the record and personally, very much appreciate the leadership and expertise that Bobby provided. She was a one-person financial consulting machine for this organization for years. Think the world of her, love her dearly. I'm sorry to see her go, but I think she had other things to deal with. And I'd like you to join me in for the record and thanking Bobby for her years of public service. I will miss her and I wish her all the best. And Gary, I might look to you first for any comments you might have, since you and she served together on the boards for a long time.
oh, we had a wonderful team. We didn't always agree outside of the either the commission or the HDP meetings, but we always, if we disagreed with great courtesy. And I have only the utmost respect and admiration for that woman. We will miss it.
Thank you. Any comments, Stephanie?
Just for the sake of not letting her incredible years of service go unnoticed, I feel like I should say something. Yeah, when I came on the board and met her, it was incredible to meet somebody who had done so much service and had a legacy already built as a woman who was doing finance and a lot of things that I can't imagine what getting her career started must have been like, but she really is so well respected, and she's inspiring to have gotten to work with. I hope she enjoys her free time. I believe she's on the pension board at the city, so I don't know if
Yes.
it sounds like her hobbies are ones that I wouldn't find fun, but I wish her all the best, and we'll miss her very much.
Yeah, I'm going to miss her terribly personally as well. She told me once she got on that other board that we spoiled her. She didn't know how well off she was. So she's been great. And once we get to end of the new year, we'll need to see about reconstituting this board, Madam Chair of the Housing Commission. So we'll deal with that in 2022. And I have no other comments at this point. Well, yes, I do. Excuse me. Got several here. Before I go to the others, let me see if Gary, you or Stephanie have anything you want to say to the board. I've got a couple, 3 more items as well.
No, I've got nothing.
Okay, great. Let me just remark upon some items that have occurred or are occurring at present. Casa Colina. At our October meeting, this board approved the pre-development budget for the Casa Colina project. Since then, staff have been working to complete the selection and contract for architecture, civil engineering, and a HUD consultant. Staff also are drafting the solicitations for the procurement of a relocation agent and moving company. In addition, staff has started working on the process to ask the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for an increase in the project-based voucher rent subsidy for this property. The higher rent subsidy will support the loan that will be necessary for the comprehensive rehabilitation of the property. You will recall that Casa Colina provides 75 affordable rental apartments for seniors in the Colina del Sol neighborhood in the Mid-City area. HDP acquired and rehabilitated the property in 2004. In 2019, the property reached its 15-year mark, as you know, is the end of its tax credit compliance time period. And the tax credit investor exited at that time, and HDP acquired their interest in the partnership. Second issue, and either Stephanie or Gary, if you have questions on any of this stuff, please interrupt me. Second item is the accessory dwelling unit pilot program. As you will remember, HDP worked with the San Diego Housing Commission to construct detailed accessory dwelling units in the available yard space at 5 single-family homes HDP owns in the Nestor community in South Bay. These types of units are often referred to as granny flats or ADUs. Are we showing photos of those now? Great, thank you, Scott. Photos of these ADUs are being shown now on screen. In October, this board approved a contribution of up to $200,000 from HDP toward the completion of the ADU project. We documented the lessons learned from this project to share with the public. The lessons learned are part of a comprehensive report that also provides estimated costs and timelines for building ADUs. This report is available on the Housing Commission's website at www.sdhc.org/ADU. In addition, through this pilot program, we created permit-ready plan templates. When these templates receive final approval from the city, they will also be made available to the public. These permit-ready plans will help those who are interested in developing ADUs on their own properties. We anticipate receiving final approval for these plans by the end of this year. The 5 ADUs we built will be rented as affordable housing for households with low income. Construction on the units was substantially complete in October. The final SDG&E utility connections were still needed, and those are being completed this month. Lease up of these units will begin early in the new year. ADUs are an important option to create new rental homes in San Diego. This is essential to help address the housing shortage in the city. In fact, as you may well remember, a report the Housing Commission published in 2017, which was paid for by HDP, identified ADUs as one of the 5 main sources of potential new housing for the city of San Diego over the following 10 years through 2028. And I'd like to take a moment to thank the staff at the Housing Commission, most directly responsible for the success of this pilot program. First is George Hunt, who brought the ADU concept to the Housing Commission's leadership team and provided construction management oversight during the development process. Also, Frank Hanna, who provided project management and oversaw the consultants and budget throughout this process. Also, Josh Hoffman, who oversaw the development team. Jenny Cho, who prepared the lessons learned report that will be a valuable resource for homeowners in San Diego. And Emily Jacobs, head of real estate, who oversaw the ADU pilot program after Mike Pavko left us last May and followed this process through its completion. And I'd like to give a thanks to all of the staff members for some outstanding work on this project. And the idea for this that came from staff, and the planning document that led to this too came directly out of HDP. I'd like to stop now. That concludes my report. If any of the board, either of the board members would have anything they'd like to add to it, or any comments or responses to these items. Great. Okay. Thank you. Now we will proceed with the action items on today's agendas. First is item 7 regarding the authorization for signatories for both HDP and HDP Mason. For this item and other items during today's meeting that are related to each other, we will hear one presentation and then vote on each with separate votes. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 7 on both the HDP and HDP Mason agendas. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. And this is regarding authorization for signatures for both HDP and HDP Mason. No written public comments were submitted regarding this item. Once again, the number is 833-610-2513. And we will take public comments after the staff presentation. The director, Josh Hoffman, will be presenting this item. And Josh, you may begin whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. Staff is seeking approval of the action item detailed in the corresponding board report for this item, more specifically to approve the following recommendations. Next slide, please. That the board of directors authorize Emily Jacobs as Executive Vice President of HDP and HDP Mason, and Suket Dayal as Executive Vice President of HDP and HDP Mason, subject to the supervision or direction of the board of directors, the president or the senior vice president of the corporation, to execute any and all documents, A, necessary to secure ownership or financing of real property, including but not limited to purchase and sales contracts, escrow instructions, assignments of purchase and sales contracts, and amendments and extensions of said documents. B, necessary for the operation of the residential properties owned or to be owned by the corporation in the normal course of business. Or C, welfare exemption application. And next slide, please. Authorize any and all actions heretofore taken by any officer of the corporation and any person acting on behalf of or under the direction of such officer in connection with any transaction or objectives approved in any or all of the foregoing resolutions, and all transactions related thereto, or hereby approved, ratified, and confirmed in all respects, and any and all actions hereafter taken or to be taken by any such officer in furtherance of the objectives or any or all of the foregoing resolutions are hereby authorized, approved, and ratified in all respects. Appoint Emily Jacobs and Suket Dayal as Executive Vice Presidents of HDP and HDP Mason. Approve the resolutions prepared by legal counsel for HDP and HDP Mason relating to the action items listed above. Find that the foregoing transactions are just and reasonable as to HDP and HDP Mason for the purposes of California Corporations Code Section 5234. Staff recommends that the board approve the item as presented in the report and as recommended by staff, and we're happy to answer any questions at this time.
Well, first, we'll now take any public comments from callers on this item. And Scott, I'll ask if there are any callers on this item.
Excuse me, we do not have any callers on this item.
Then that concludes the public comment period for item number 7. And board members, do you have questions or comments on this item? Gary or Stephanie? Do I hear a motion on this item then from either?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Gary Gramling and a second by Stephanie Benvenuto to approve item number 7. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion, please. Gary Gramling?
Yes.
Stephanie Benvenuto?
Yes.
And I too, Rick Gentry, vote in favor of the motion, which carries by a vote of 3-0. We will now adjourn as the HDP board to convene as the HDP Mason board. And may I assume I take the same motion from Gary and Stephanie for this item as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Then as I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Gary Gramling?
Yes.
Stephanie Benvenuto?
Yes.
And I, Rick Gentry, vote in favor as well, which carries by a vote of 3-0. We will now adjourn as the HDP Mason Board and reconvene as the HDP Board to deal with item number 8. And item number 8 is regarding approval of the 2022 board meeting schedule for both HDP and HDP Mason. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 8 on both agendas. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. And no written public comments were submitted regarding this item. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Emily Jacobs will be presenting this item. Emily, begin when you're ready, please.
Good morning, Chair and board members. Next slide, please. Staff is recommending approval of the 2022 meeting schedule shown on this slide. The HDP board meeting would meet 4 times next year in 2022, March 24th, June 16th, September 22nd, and December 15th. The HDP Mason board would have 1 meeting on Thursday, December 15th, 2022. Next slide. That concludes the presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
And before that, Scott, are there any comments from the public?
We do not have any callers yet, but we have about 15 seconds left before we hit the 90-second mark.
Great.
The time has passed and there are no callers.
This concludes the public comment period for item number 8. Board members, either Gary or Stephanie, do you have any questions or comments on this item?
No, but I would move to approve.
Do I hear a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Stephanie Benvenuto, a second by Gary Gramling to approve item number 8. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Gary Gramling?
Yes.
Stephanie Benvenuto?
Yes.
And I, Rick Gentry, also vote in favor of the motion, and the motion passes by a vote of 3-0. We will now adjourn as the HDP board to convene as the HDP Mason board for this same item. I will take the same, assume the same motion for both Stephanie and Gary for this.
Yeah.
Then we have the same motion by Stephanie Benvenuto, seconded by Gary Gramling to approve item number 8 on the HDP Mason board agenda. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion, please. Gary Gramling?
Yes.
Stephanie Benvenuto?
Yes.
And I, Rick Gentry, vote in favor as well. And the motion passes 3-0. We will now adjourn as the HDP Mason board to reconvene as the HDP board. And now we will consider item 9, which is the asking for approval of the 2022 operating budget for Housing Development Partners. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 9 on the HDP board agenda. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. No written public comments were submitted regarding this item. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. We will take public comments after the staff presentation, and Suket Dayal and Julie Conserva will be presenting this item this morning. So Suket and Julie, please begin when you're ready.
Good morning, board. My name is Suket Dayal. I'm the Executive Vice President of Business Administration. I'm here with Julie Conserva, the Director of Real Estate Finance, and we're here to present the HDP 2022 operating budget. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start us off by sharing some of the assumptions, and Julie will then provide the budget details. On the slide here, we have 4 columns. The first one represents the actual closing of 2020. The column next to it is based on our current revenue and source uses, the projections that we have for the closing of 21. The third column is what we had presented as a budget for 21. And the last column is what we're seeking your approval for the budget of 2022. Let's start with the revenue. There are 2 main elements for the revenue, the developer fees and the operational cash flow. On the developer fees, we took a conservative estimate. We based it on historical transactions, current funding opportunities, and meeting project milestones. Let me use an example. In 21, one of the biggest funding opportunities was HomeKey. And while HDP did not see any acquisitions on the Housing Commission side, we did acquire 2 hotels. HomeKey's back this year as well, and the agency focus for the first 2 quarters is going to be on HomeKey. For our milestones, we anticipate meeting the milestones for disbursements for 3 properties, and that's West Park, Quality Inn, and Mariners Village. The next element on revenue is the operating cash flow from our rental portfolios. Now on this, while we had a conservative approach in the 21 budget because of COVID, we're going to use the actuals that are in the second column as a basis for our 22 projections. Move to the uses. The uses are accordingly adjusted based on the anticipated revenues and reflected in the line items for a total headcount of 7. Julie will now provide the details on the budget. Next slide, please.
Good morning. So as discussed, the 3.8 million of revenues include 2.3 million in developer fees, which are earned from achieving project-specific milestones, such as construction completion and stabilization of rental operations. Additional revenues anticipated include receipts from available cash flows from rental operations and partnership management fees. Operating expenses proposed total 1.6 million. This is composed mainly of salaries and benefits and general administrative expenses. Corporate operating reserves of 782,000 are calculated at 6 months of essential operating expenses. The remaining surplus for the year is about 1.4 million, which will be retained for future organizational goals. Next slide, please. This is the total sources and uses anticipated for the organization, which include reserves and commitments of 6.2 million and working capital of 6 million with a total of 14 million uses. Next slide, please. And that concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Yes, Gary, if I could, let's take any public comments first.
Okay.
I failed to speak up very quickly. Scott, do we have any public comments at all?
There are no callers on this item.
Thank you. Then this concludes the public comment period for item 9 on the HDP agenda. And Gary, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I noticed that our projected revenue is $2.5 million less than the original budget of 5.8 million. And I'm wondering why such a large difference.
So I would say that is generally due to timing differences of achievement of the various milestones. A lot of the projects were anticipated to meet some of those milestones in late 2021 and are now being pushed to early 2022, such as Mariners Village. We're anticipating the loan conversion in January, February of 2022, and Quality Inn. The stabilization is one of the milestones we have to achieve. Both projects are complete, but there's a couple milestones that are yet to be achieved. So a lot of those amounts are just pushed to the next fiscal year.
Okay. So the money's coming just
Yes.
a little
Yes.
bit later.
Yes, I mean, COVID delays and just estimation of milestones is not always
Okay.
fact.
Any other questions, Gary, or comments? Stephanie, how about you? Questions or comments or concerns?
Yeah, I had the same question as Gary, but just, and I can appreciate timing and all of those things, but once those fees do come in, do you anticipate that we'll be in the ballpark of that 5.8, or even with those, can you crystal ball that a little bit for me?
So I think, so the 3 million is what we are projecting for next year, which is inclusive of what we expect to be pushed from 2021. There were also a couple of projects that, new projects that were slated to be done in the 2021 budget. And because we did acquisitions on the Housing Commission side, we did not have new acquisitions in 2021 on the HDP side.
Okay, so you're comfortable that none of this is indicative of any other shortfall that we should be anticipating?
Yes, correct.
Great. Yeah, and then one other just quick question. This is probably for Mr. Gentry. I'm thinking about the impact to COVID in the workplace and thinking about the costs, admin fees and all that. One of the costs is rent and the space
Yeah.
that we're taking in offices. We've talked about this kind of in the housing commission side, but just curious if you can let us know what you're thinking as of now about, will there be downsizing? Do you anticipate to hold on to the office space you have now?
Right now, and this is more speculation than the conclusion, but my speculation is we will not need that office space. We've been on working remotely primarily for the last 20 months since COVID hit in mid-March of 2020. And as I indicated at the board meeting last month, of the Housing Commission, I don't think there's been a 20-month time period in the history of this organization where we've gotten more done than the last 20 months. It's been remarkable how well the work has been accomplished. I was always a remote work skeptic till I've seen the way it's operated. I'm a believer now. And our staff have done an excellent job, diligent and loyal and true, and all those accolades over the last 20 months getting the work done. And that tells me that the new normal, I'm assuming there will be a new normal at some point, is going to be different from the old normal. And we're going to have some combination of working remotely and working in place in the office. Now, we're going to spend a good bit of the next calendar year figuring that out. We want to have some conversations with staff, some conversations with the union, of course, and we will take a look at what we think the new normal is going to be. And what we hope to do is to strike a balance between competing needs of working from home and working in the office. So that's a long-winded way of Stephanie saying we're looking into it. I think it's going to change from past practices, and I would be shocked if we need this space going forward.
Thank you. Yeah, that's about what I anticipated, but continuing to speculate, I'm guessing we're not going to make dramatic decisions about releasing space or keeping space probably in 2022 generally. Maybe let that one ride.
I think that, and again, this is speculative, so don't hold me to the exact date, but I'm expecting to be able to make a decision on what the new normal is going to be by the end of this fiscal year, June 30. That's
Okay.
my own speculation. And then that will allow us to make any adjustments going forward thereafter. But we will do nothing quickly, and the decisions will be considered, and there will be involve full board participation at all board levels of what we do going forward.
That makes sense. Okay, great. Thank you.
Let me ask Jeff Davis, you have anything to add to that before we go on?
No, I think you articulated it very well.
All righty. Let me find my place on my papers here. Stephanie, I see what you go through at every board meeting now. Any other questions or comments on the budget? Let's go back to the, I forget what you called it, Julie, about the sheet showing reserves.
The sources and uses, slide 4.
Yes. No, it's the next one. It's a very, very short, that one. Just I'd like to point out to the board that these are, remember, reserves cover a lot of different uses, and we've used reserves in the past for a variety of purposes. One is to cover any potential downside going forward, which typically is about 6 months of operating cost. We've also got reserves built in here for at least one major policy paper for the Housing Commission that we've done every year for the past several years. You all will remember the Kinsey report on housing goals that we did in 2017. The homelessness action plan for the city that was done in 2019, and the preservation study that was done for the city in 2020, all paid for with proceeds that came out of retained earnings by HDP. We will be looking at additional reports and special purpose uses going forward. We've also used working capital accumulated to invest in new properties. So just to make sure you understand that these are not all just reserves sitting fallow, but they have uses intended for them going forward. And let me ask both Stephanie and Garrett, any comments about that before we go on?
Not for me.
Nope.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Then let me ask if we have a motion on this item number 9, the budget for HDP. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move approval.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Gary Gramling, a second by Stephanie Benvenuto to approve item number 9. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Gary Gramling,
Yes.
Stephanie Benvenuto,
Yes.
and I vote in favor as well, Rick Gentry. And so therefore the motion passes by a vote of 3-0. And next we'll hear a presentation for item 9 on the HDP Mason agenda and item 10 on the HDP agenda. Oh, wait a minute. We've already approved that.
Item 9 on the HDP Mason agenda is different from item 9 on the HDP agenda.
Yes, it is. Thank you. We have one presentation for item 9 on the HDP Mason agenda and item 10 on the HDP agenda, the approval of the 2022 property budgets. These are the property budgets for the Mason and for the properties identified on the HDP agenda for this item. The phone line is now open for public comments about these items. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. And again, no written public comments were submitted regarding this item. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. And we will take any public comments after the staff presentation. And Emmanuel Ariano will be presenting these items. And Emmanuel, you may begin whenever you're ready, sir.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Gentry, board members and legal counsel. I am Emmanuel Arellano, Vice President of Asset Management. I'm presenting the proposed 2022 property operating budgets as indicated in item 10 on the agenda for the HDP board and item number 9 on the agenda for the HDP Mason board. Next slide, please. For 2022, staff anticipate increasing rents to align with the maximum payment standard on the project-based voucher or PBV properties. Rent increases for PBV units do not affect the portion of the rent that the tenants pay. Rent increases of 2 to 3% are anticipated for non-PBV properties. This is consistent with underwriting pro forma. Regarding operating expenses, increases in property insurance, maintenance contracts, utilities, and salary-related benefits and taxes are also anticipated. The industry typically sees annual upward adjustments on these categories. Next slide. The HDP owned portfolio is expected to have an increase in total revenue from $14.6 million in fiscal year 2021 to $16.9 million in fiscal year 2022. Total operating expenses will increase to $8.1 million, up from $7.3 million in fiscal year 2021. The net operating income for the portfolio is expected to increase by $1.4 million to $8.8 million. This is primarily the result of the anticipated and higher total revenue attributed to the rent increases of the PBV units. The largest year-over-year change in the other expense category. The reasons for this change include the following items. Increases to replacement reserves and ground lease categories at Mariners Village were projected. This is due to the construction completion and expected full occupancy of the property. Furthermore, additional replacement reserves were budgeted at San Diego Square in anticipation of future capital needs, as well as expected higher ground lease payment. A higher ground lease payment is also expected for Village North Senior Apartments. As a reminder, a large number of these properties have a ground lease with the Housing Commission. The ground lease due is determined by a percentage of gross revenue. The anticipated increase in gross revenue will partly translate into higher ground lease payments from HDP to the Housing Commission, captured under the other expense category. Lastly, in FY22, we also plan to start the replacement reserve deposits of the 5 recently completed accessory dwelling units or ADUs. Next slide, please. Staff continually look for opportunities to mitigate increases in operating costs. In the next year, staff plan to review the major service contracts and request competitive quotes for potential lower pricing. We will explore any utility cost saving opportunities such as LED lighting retrofits and faucet aerators if not already in place. We would also be analyzing the fee structure of the third-party management companies and suggest a new structure for a more competitive pricing. This is in addition to analyzing the property management companies' build-back charges to ensure they are within industry standards. The insurance market continues to be a challenging environment. However, staff will explore potential cost-saving measures regarding insurance premiums. Next slide, please. This slide shows the operating budget specifically for the Mason. The Mason is expected to have a significant growth in net operating income from approximately $61,000 to $97,000. This is due to the planned rent increase to the PVV units using the voucher maximum payment standard. Again, rent increases to PVV units do not impact the tenant's portion of rent. Total maintenance is expected to experience an increase of approximately $7,800 in comparison to last year's budget. This is due to anticipated HVAC repairs, additional plumbing repairs based on trends, and the installation of an upgraded security camera system. Next slide, please. The photos on this slide are example of a few of the properties discussed in today's presentation. Next slide. Today, staff requests that the HDP board approve the 2022 operating budgets for the properties shown on this slide and listed on the agenda and in the staff report. The approval does not include Courtyard, Studio 15, and Island Village. These properties are partnership properties, and approval is directly handled between the lenders and the partners. These budgets will be presented as an informational item during the March board meeting. Staff also requests today that the HDP Mason board approve the 2022 operating budget for the Mason Hotel property. Next slide. This concludes staff presentation. We're available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Scott, are there any public comments from callers on this item?
There are no callers on this item.
Thank you. This concludes then the public comment period for these items. And board members, do you have any questions or comments on these items? Gary, might start with you. And
No, I
Scott,
have no question.
Scott, if you could remove the question comment page from the screen, please. Thank you. Gary?
No, I have no question.
Stephanie?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Again, if you look at that list of properties that HTP owns and recall, that's in itself larger than probably 95% of the housing agencies in this country just owned by HDP. So I think that this wing of the Housing Commission has been remarkable over the last 12, 13 years, and its expansion of what we've been able to do with it. And it's a credit to the good work of our real estate department and the whole agency as well, for that matter. That said, then we have a, let me ask if we have a motion on item number 10 on the HDP board agenda to approve the property budgets for the properties listed on the agenda.
I'll move.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Stephanie Benvenuto and a second by Gary Gramling to approve item 10 on the HDP agenda. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Gary Gramling?
Yes.
Stephanie Benvenuto?
Yes.
And I, Rick Gentry, vote in favor as well. And the motion carries by a vote of 3-0. We will now adjourn as the HDP Board to reconvene as the HDP Mason Board to consider item 9 on the HDP Mason Board agenda. And this is the property budget for the Mason. And do I assume the same motion by Benvenuto and Grambling on this as well?
Yes.
Then as I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Gary Grambling,
Yes.
Stephanie Benvenuto,
Yes.
and I, Rick Gentry, vote in favor of the motion as well, and the motion passes by a vote of 3-0. We will now adjourn as the HDP Mason Board to reconvene as the HDP Board. And let me ask if the board members have any questions or would like an update on any of the informational items listed on today's agendas on either the HDP Board or the HDP Mason Board. Any updates that you all would like?
No. I think that's satisfied.
Stephanie, anything from you?
No, I'm good on this list. Thank you.
Okay, and let me ask, before I ask for a motion to adjourn for either Stephanie or Gary, any other items that you wish to comment on or ask about or to discuss during this board meeting today on either HDP or HDP Mason?
Yeah, you did a great job navigating the speaker notes.
It's me great sympathy for you, Madam Chair.
Well, it's a lot of words, huh?
On the big board, it is that. And former Chair Grambling. And I very much appreciate both of you, and thank you, friend Gareth. Thank you for hanging with this group as long as you have too. You may be setting a record for the person with the longest connectivity to this organization. Thank you for that. And I don't mean by age, I just mean by time on the board.
Yeah. That's a good way to maneuver out of that one.
That's the way to do an insult in passing. So any other comments by anyone before I ask for adjournment? Okay. That said, this concludes the board special meeting today. The meeting is hereby adjourned at 11:56. Stephanie never broke your record, so Gary yours either, but 11:56 a.m. On Friday, December the 10th. The next HDP board meeting is scheduled for March 24th, 2022. The next HDP Mason board meeting is scheduled for December 15th, 2022. And for those of you I don't have a chance to interact with again this month, wish you all the best in the holiday season, and thank you much, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Good holidays to you.
Good holidays. Bye-bye, guys.